So welcome to this webinar on Lean UX for Climate Tech. My name is Marie and I'm with my colleague Joe, and we're super happy to premiere this first session to you today. So we thank you for sharing your intros and questions. I think before we do our own intros with Joe, we have one more question for you, which is, what are the biggest challenges you faced when it comes obviously to designing your products, launching them, or marketing them? That would be super helpful to share those challenges between each other, and hopefully we can tackle these during our session and answer some of your questions. So use the chat to do that. And in the meantime, Joe and I will do a quick intro of ourselves and the C Collective. So my name is Marie. I'm the co-founder and managing partner at the C Collective. My core expertise is marketing, and I have experience in marketing, obviously, but also user experience and sales. I've been working in the field of technology for probably almost 20 years, working with blue chip and startup organizations on the B2B and the B2C front. And I founded the C Collective 5 years ago to focus only on organizations with a positive social and environmental impact. I also happen to be an environmental science educator, working with a couple of charities on that front. And I'm really passionate about bringing people and planet-centered approaches to product design as well as marketing. So I will hand over to Joe because I'm a marketing expert, and this session is really about UX. But spoiler alert, Lean UX is actually the happy marriage between marketing and design. So over to you, Joe.
No spoilers, Marie. Thanks. I'm Joe. I'm the UX designer in Marie's team. I joined Marie a year and a half ago now. Marie, was it? My expertise are in UX and product design. 15 years now, both working with big corporates within teams, agency side, and the last few years focused on helping startups bring their products to life. I have expertise in user research, in product strategy, and design, visual design, and I've sort of helped most recently, most social impact. So health tech and with Marie, climate tech is a focus of mine now.
Right, thanks, Joe. So a few words about our organization, the C Collective. We're a UK-based consultancy currently operating at the Impact Hub in London Euston just now. We work with clients around Europe, supporting entrepreneurs that are scaling sustainable solutions through people and planet-centered design and marketing. And we know that some of you fit this profile today. That's great. And we also support more traditional businesses that are trying to transform for net positive impact and resilience. And we use the toolbox of the donut economics and design to do what we call regenerative business transformation. So the first couple of pillars of our services for impact entrepreneurs are design, which is actually more than just design. It's strategy, user research, UX, and UI. So this means, designing products, brands, services, websites, and end-to-end user experiences. And obviously marketing, so creating user-centered marketing strategies to engage and convert users, and also helping you implement marketing functions at different stages of your business. So really excited today to do this webinar on Lean UX. In the context of the planetary crisis. So what do we have in terms of, I think we have a few points of orders. We are recording this and we will share the recording and the slide with you. No problem with that. You don't need to take lots of notes. And I think Joe is also feeling very generous today, and he's offering some free UX consultations to discuss your specific needs after this session. So you can book some time with Joe to continue the conversation.
Cool. So agenda today, I'm going to cover what is Lean UX and discuss a little bit the key concepts, the process behind it, the steps you need to take, which will cover target customer, discovering unmet needs, creating the value proposition canvas, what's on it, and how to use it, and then a bit later the feature definition and UX. We'll cover the high level concepts of lean. It can be quite in depth, so we'll cover what we thought was most valuable for you today. There is obviously more we can cover and discuss if you want to later on after the session. And the final bit is lean UX enough for climate tech and impact entrepreneurs?
So, Joe, let's start with the definition of what lean UX means.
Cool. Yeah, I'll cover the sort of main points of it. So the lean UX is predominantly focused on defining key hypotheses about your product or service that you want to test. And it's very focused on identifying whether those hypotheses are correct or not, and allowing you to move very quickly into identify whether you can make impact for the customer early on, discover the fastest way to win against competitors, because obviously competitors can get bogged down with building things that aren't valuable, and it's really focused on building what is valuable for business and customer. Keeping scope of all the features very small and manageable, so ideal for small teams and startups, that you really identify only the most valuable items to build, and focused on testing with real customers as often as early as possible, basically from the start, to learn and iterate as quickly as possible to the right product. And ultimately the focus is achieving product market fit for your product or service. It's predominantly used digital these days, but it does fit also physical products or any sort of product or service process you're undertaking. Why is it good? Why do you feel it's good for climate tech? The reason being is it's all about efficient usage of resource being physical elements such as servers, etc., but also people, and designing out any wastage. So because you're only focused on the real things that will bring real value, you really cut out a lot of the things that you could build that will just sit, never be used, wasting resource somewhere, and time for yourselves as well, and of course money. And then the focused on actually only testing things to really make judgments based on real data. So testing with customers really early, learning as much really quickly, so you can move faster to the right product and reach product market fit. It's built up into these kind of sections in terms of the pyramid. If anyone's seen this before, it's two main sections to it. So you start at the base, which is all about identifying a target customer and their unmet needs. That's obviously key importance, and that's where the most time should be spent in the process. And really identifying who you are trying to target, what is their needs, both and focus on the unmet needs, which are needs that they may know that they're missing and they want a product to solve that problem, or they may not even know themselves of the need. So that's where you should spend a lot of time, and we'll go into a bit more detail on that. The top of the pyramids there, the green sections, is then once you've identified that target customer, to build that into a value proposition, so you know exactly what you need to build. We'll come to that later. And then identifying the features. If it's a digital product, features could also be physical product based as well, or service based. And then finally the UX, the actual experience that customer will be confronted with. It's at the top in its smallest part, because you should be building the smallest thing that will reach product market fit the fastest. So the two things combined there will hopefully enable you to reach product market fit. The base of the pyramid, and this is how we kind of think about it as a team, is that's all about designing and market the right thing, so identifying the true needs. And then the top of the pyramid is all about design and market it right. And the key thing here, which I think people miss, is it's not just about the design of a product, but it's also about the marketing. And the marketing can be used throughout the whole process, not at the end just to sell the product and service you created. But we'll come to that as we move forward. So the core process, it's all about thinking, creating hypotheses, building something. And by building, again, we mean it could be marketing, advertisement, it could be a product, it could be a digital platform, and then learning as quickly as possible to then rethink about it and build again. And you keep iterating this process, and this process does not stop. This should be kind of how you progress further. So it's not just when you reach product market fit, you can also use it later on to optimize and continue your development of whatever service or product you're creating. One very, very key concept to understand early, and this is what we advise as well as a team, is to set up the feedback loops really, really early. And that's talking to real customers. That's quite a critical point and quite a hard thing to do later on if you haven't done it, and you could go down the wrong pathway quite early if you don't set these feedback loops. And starting in the middle, the central circle there, is facing the critical assumptions you're making and really be self-critical in terms of what you're trying to test with real customers. And you can do that with a small set of customers, 5 to 10 people or potential customers, and they can be within your own network. It's probably the easiest place to start. A lot of people probably are working in an industry or building a business in an industry that they know, so they probably have connections they can use to test some early critical assumptions. Also marketing, which we'll come to later, you can use marketing techniques to test some early assumptions. Once you've identified the critical assumptions and probably identified a target customer, you can move forward to then some early product service assumptions, and that testing is more early prototype testing. Yeah, you could use up to 50 people kind of really for that network to build that, be enough to validate some early product assumptions there or service assumptions. And then the outer circle is once you've achieved kind of product market fit, to continue the product service of refinement, and that's usually with obviously real users, bigger cohort of hopefully active users that you've created on your platform. Some of you may have seen this as kind of a joke within the design industry of like why Lean UX is a thing and why it was created. I think a lot of other methodologies like waterfall and agile can lead to some issues. So different profiles in the team maybe having bigger say on what's created can lead to the wrong product being built. Customer may describe what they want, but that doesn't necessarily mean actually what you should design. For example, here the 3 seats on the swing, that's how the customer could describe it. Many people in the team could overcomplicate it, not build the right thing, oversell it as a example there. But what the customer wanted and what would have met the customer need properly is just a simple tire swing on the bottom right there. So it's trying reduce the amount of risk here of creating the wrong thing and not meeting the true customer need. The overall process is moving up the pyramid. So you start with the base, start customer, and moving through it. The product market fit arrows there be slightly misleading that it's in between the two sections, but ultimately it's showing that those two sections together create the product market fit. Starting with the target customer. For Lean UX, you kind of create quite lean personas. Don't need to go into really heavy. This should be easily to digest for team members, but also just as lean as possible. And what the sections are focused on for defining the customer is demographics, the geographical elements, the psychographic factors, high level needs, and detailed needs. That's usually enough there in terms of you can tick all those off in terms of validated research that you will have enough about the customer. One technique we've used before and is quite successful is full store. And this is quite a marketing focused exercise tends to be, and a very simple exercise to run, that you could create some hypotheses around what you think is going to be a solution or the target customer you're trying to target. And you can run some adverts, have a landing page which just captures emails and catches interest. Doesn't go anywhere, doesn't lead to a platform, but you can build up an interest and see what advertisement works, which gives you an indication on what the unmet need might be. So you can use that early on as a research tool, which is what we're saying about marketing being used throughout the whole process. An example case study here is an impact entrepreneur I worked with who wanted to enter the sustainability market, thought there would be a market, didn't know exactly what to offer and who to offer to. So they set up a simple landing page, ran some ads targeting different kind of sectors, and just put a message on there saying, if you need help becoming more sustainable, contact us, we can help. And they actually ended up getting most of their contacts were from farmers who were struggling because their biggest issue was that they had escalating electricity bills due to increase in demand within the farm, and they didn't know how to solve that, and obviously energy costs increasing, and they were technophobic generally, and a bit struggling, didn't know where to go for a solution to that problem. So they were contacting them, and then they decided that's the target customer they're going to focus on. And then what they do is then discover a bit of the unmet needs. So they had a high level need of lower electricity, and wanted to understand a bit more the nuances there within the actual need. Any unmet needs are generally pain points, frustrations, could be hacks that the target customer is doing to make a system work for them. And you build up, the idea is you focus on the problem space, which is the customer problem space, discover a lot of unmet needs, which hopefully will lead to quite a few potential solution hypotheses. You can then test each hypothesis to see which one could be a valid solution. And this is for a product focus point of view. We'll talk about later in terms of testing you can do with that, prototyping and marketing, but also it's can be a marketing focused exercise. Marie, if you want to add any.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of marketing, you can test things like your the hierarchy of benefits and USPs and the messages that resonate the most with your target audience. You could also test pricing models. Does the one-off pricing versus the recurring or subscription price work better? So basically everything can be tested on the product and marketing front.
Yeah. Indeed, and you do that early on. The earlier you do it, the better. And the person of Lean is doing it right at the base of the pyramid, to really understand what it is you're trying to achieve, and hopefully that leads you to a final solution for that customer that you know for sure that it's validated and it's going to meet an unmet need there. So for a farmer base, it's thinking that you're going to stay in a problem space, really think about the hypotheses you want to test, build some sort of solution, whether it's marketing focused or product focused, learn about it, rethink, readjust, and move back into the solution space. So it's this cycle very rapidly, and that's a core kind of process in Lean. So how to discover some insights. And again, like I said, this was where most of the time can be spent at the start. You look for market failures, so not just customer pain points, but where the market's failing for people, and where people are just hitting dead ends, for example, in the markets. And some methods to do that, classical kind of user interviews, once you understood the target customer you're trying to get to. Policy research is a key one, especially for the impact and climate space, as I'm sure many of you are aware. And that gives you a bit of a front run in terms of what possibly could happen, which Maria will come to in a second. And environmental assessments and industrial impact mapping. So these are all methods that we've used and can use to help identify a bit the market failures.
Yeah, the other idea is to identify not only current problems that people are facing and are aware or maybe not aware of, but also future needs that may arise. So different ways to do that is to look at environmental scenario, climate models, all these kind of things, and social impact trends. And this way, by doing so, you can identify short, mid, long-term risks and opportunities on the environmental and social front. The other aspect is to factor in is behavioral inertia. Are users having problems because they rely on outdated systems, because alternatives don't exist? Or you can also think about, I like to talk about learned helplessness. So are people just overwhelmed and feeling helpless and demotivated to act and change things for the better? That's also another consideration. And then you can look into technology shifts as well. It's not because some sustainable innovations are not there yet that they won't, reach beyond the early adopters and become mainstream at some stage. I think we have a question. Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Isaiah, CEO of Alma Earth Group. We're focusing on environmental scientists as our target audience. I really like this slide. I wonder, do you guys have any tips on like resources or platforms that you go to kind of like dig more into these topics?
You mean the future needs identification?
Yeah. I mean, I imagine like a simple Google search or AI with like as somewhere to start, but I don't know. Are there like research papers? Are there
so there's loads. Even despite, I'm gonna do a back joke, the US shutting down some of the research on that front, but there's loads of research on prospective research. I think IPCC reports and all the climate models reporting, looking at different climate scenarios, are really useful to understand, at least at high level. And then social trends, you have people doing some reports on that. You can do social listening. I think, Joe, you're going to talk about that. Yeah, I mean, we can share a few links if you'd like. But yeah, so there's a wealth of resources to use that, and that also links to our okay, how do we, thank you for your question, but yeah, that links to how do we use Lean UX approach to tackle this. Joe, if you can click on the next item. So basically, one of the things you can do, and obviously it's good to use the reports and research I've mentioned as intel, but you can run future mapping workshops with different experts, prospective experts, and real users and other stakeholders, and scenario planning exercises instead of just reacting to existing problems. So yeah, future mapping outlook is really interesting to bring into the conversation there.
Yeah, indeed. I'll just double down on the speak to experts, like try and identify as many experts as you can and reach out to them. Usually they're pretty willing to speak and to advise, so that's where I'd start first. One interesting one that can be quite interesting and fun to find out is the user hacks. So how are people, and this is usually people that are more power users potentially in the field of the product services, how are they manipulating or changing or using a system to make it meet their needs, even if the system wasn't designed to do that? So essentially hacking it a little bit. It's a really interesting way to identify systemic gaps that are happening, and also it reveals real pain points, because if people can hack around a system, they're so willing to use it that if there's a product and service that could offer that without having to hack the system, then they're probably going to adopt very early on and be your early adopters. So it's quite a useful thing to look for. It depends on the industry you're looking at, though. How to do that is observational studies is the key one, especially if it's a physical kind of product or service. But also if it's digital, it's still interesting to observe and run those studies and try and see real behaviour, stakeholder interviews. Of course, user interviews and user testing is still valid here, but observational studies gets to real behaviour. In terms of then the target customer, if you've done that work, and like I said, that's the most time should be spent here, is you should create a full target customer and understand their problem space. So the example of the farmer from earlier, who need a lower cost of electricity, there's some additional points that have been discovered, so they need to remain financially viable. They're actually at risk of not remaining open as a farm. Within a couple of years, they found an increased use of electrical equipment because the actual equipment they're using is shifting towards electric rather than fossil. And there's a policy coming up, sustainable farming incentive, that needs to be compliant with. Some farmers knew about it, didn't know about it. There's opportunity in terms of lots of land available for energy production. They didn't know how to utilize that land, their own land for that, and opportunity to then use wind or solar. So it created two possible solution hypotheses: was to use micro wind turbines, sell them to the farmers, or solar panels. And it's then a case of testing those hypotheses to see which ones the farmers were able to adopt, whether it's price, infrastructure, availability, and the client ends up being an importer for micro turbines specifically to farmers and installing them to the farms as well. Now a bit about the value proposition. So once you've kind of understood your target customer, understood the unmet needs and that are there, you can move towards the value proposition. And this is a canvas, the Lean UX canvas that you can use to map those things. It's also a process that is more detailed than we can go through in just the few minutes we have here today, and it's something we can help with. But essentially the core components of it are you list off your business problem that you have and the business outcome you want to achieve down the line, and then the focus on the user jobs, which is the tasks that the user will need to complete, what the user gains from doing those tasks, and what's the user pain points in trying to complete those tasks. And the flip side, in terms of mapping the product and solution that you could offer them, is like, okay, what empowers them to be able to complete those jobs? What is it that makes them satisfied in doing so? What's the pain relievers? So the things that just maybe don't delight, but at least get them to move forward to the next stage of the journey. And then the product and services ideas are around solving those issues. And the key kind of differentiator with Lean UX is the bottom 3 blocks. So you then list off the key hypotheses that you have around the product and service, and then identify what is the most important thing you need to know first to be able to evaluate whether that hypothesis is true. And then what's the least amount of work that needs to be done to learn that thing and validate or invalidate that hypothesis to move forward. So it's really about mapping the fastest way to solve the problem. Move a little bit on to feature sets. What we do as a team is, and we advise our clients to do it, is the value effort matrix. And this is essentially mapping how much effort something takes against how much value it brings to the business and to the customer. And the customer bit is a thing that the teams often forget or just can't fill in themselves because they haven't done the work in the base of the pyramid properly. And we have a whole framework and system that does this kind of automatically. You score and it creates this, so it's not just a finger in the air kind of pin the tail on a donkey situation. You're actually accurately scoring these things, and in doing that you get a priority list of what you should build first. So they come out as quick wins, filling jobs, which are things that you can do any time but not going to bring that much value, big projects that take a lot of time and effort but also bring a lot of value, and then time sinks are things that are a waste of time and not going to bring any value to anyone. So that process should be done once you've identified what it is you're trying to target customer you're going to try and achieve and what their big problems are. And then once you've got the list of prioritization, you will be able to know what you need to work on first. And to work on first and to create, it should allow you to map the minimal lovable product. And everyone's probably heard of minimal viable product, but maybe not heard it named as a minimal lovable product. I liked this one because it really hammers home that you don't just build the thing that's most feasible for the team, which is obviously often a problem with minimal viable product, that you end up just focused on the base of the pyramid there. So just what's feasible and what you can build today or tomorrow. But actually what you should focus on in doing that value effort exercise is actually understanding what is the most desirable for a user or customer, and what's most usable and valuable as well as feasible. So you don't build everything that's feasible, you build what's feasible and going to bring the core value to the customer. And that's what the minimal level product is. And of course, probably gathered from the thing, instead of working up the pyramid, you work across it in terms of building out new features. On to the final bit, the actual experience that you will build. I'm sure many of you are quite familiar with building out products and services, and I think the key thing about Lean UX, and mistake we see a lot here, is maybe jumping too quickly to creating a product and creating a service in terms of physical product or digital product, and maybe not doing that earlier work. But the process still remains the same, of course, that the idea is to test the smallest thing as quickly as possible. And that can be paper prototypes in a focus group, that can be a quick landing page on a website, that can be a fully fledged small app that you want to test a specific feature on. There's many ways of doing it, obviously starting with the smallest thing and the quickest thing first. That's going to bring the most value. And testing with around 5 to 8 users, you're going to get 80% of the problems, and allows you to learn and test it and build again. And the process still remains the same in here, that you are testing and learning as quickly as possible to iterate fast. And not investing in testing is definitely investing in creating a bad design, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. Really, any points from a marketing side? I think this can also be marketing focused as well.
Yeah, you can also definitely prototype and test any marketing, messaging, ads, creatives. That's super useful to do. I mean, when we do, for instance, even branding, before we choose a creative route, we also invite our clients to test 2 or 3 with their stakeholders to make sure the one that they prefer is also the one that their clients prefer. So yeah, I always encourage to do that on testing marketing assets, because as it says on the slide, if you don't invest in testing, you are going to have further risk and further cost of wasting your marketing design team's time or agency's time, or even your marketing dollars in terms of display ads, for instance.
Thanks, Mary. So yes, the process is the same. Think, build, learn as quickly as possible. I often do weekly sprints for these things, that you design the smallest thing possible, and design it in 1 week, and then the next week you kind of go into build mode and get some feedback analysis that you can then go back into a design sprint and redo. So weekly sprints is quite useful here. And again, I think many of you are probably aware of this kind of different usage of prototypes, many different ways of prototyping, and from low fidelity with low confidence of a solution, then probably hand sketch. If you've got still low fidelity, low confidence, and you want to move quickly, obviously wireframe, maybe a clickable wireframe. Wireframe is obviously tricky because a lot of times you won't, if you just a wireframe in front of a customer, you don't really get the full kind of experience. Customers struggle to give real critical feedback on wireframes, in my experience. And of course, nowadays, no code solutions are very viable and a quick way to build out quite complex things to test and be very fast. So that's a great way to do it. You can use AI as well to build out prototypes. What's the risk there is the energy use of AI and being a bit cautious in terms of how visible that is to yourselves in terms of the impact that could have. So we do caution it, but I know obviously it's a viable way of doing it. And then finally, then obviously, if you've got high confidence through these stages, then you can start building an alpha product and getting a real feedback from potentially real customers and early adopters.
Right, thanks, Joe. So I guess by now you've understood that the lean UX culture is kind of marketing's best friend. So lean UX is really about designing a product that can be marketed to quickly get to that product market fit that you're after, right? To do that, what you need to do is to have designed the right solution, have designed it right, of course, that's what Joe was talking about. And once you're there, you have to quickly put this in front of real clients. So the challenge there lies with marketing. And this is where you need to have an efficient customer experience or marketing strategy that really covers all the stages and channels of the buyer journey, right? So how do you do this? How do you achieve this comprehensive UX strategy? Well, first, obviously, you would, and this is where lean UX and marketing converge. It always starts with understanding the needs of your users along the buying journey. They're different from the needs of the user that your product is fulfilling. It's more about how they would buy from you. And this, once you have that, you can define what needs to be done by the business at all the stages of the buying journey and across the different channels that are relevant to your users. So for instance, a lot of people invest in a great website, and that's amazing, but you always you need to be mindful that a lot happens before people get onto your website. So most people are 50% down in their buying journey before they hit your website or speak to your sales. So you really need to understand that the branding, the storytelling, the educational bit that happens at the top of the funnel in the awareness stages is super important to invest in. And just, further down the journey, once you've acquired those clients, you're super happy. You just have to make sure that you have onboarding or customer success strategies to make sure those clients are getting the maximum value, discovering all the features that you've carefully selected. And then you have a process to collect the feedback and enter into that very healthy feedback loop, iteration loop that Joe was talking about in Lean UX.
Cool. Now I want to just discuss a little bit some common pitfalls we see in UX and marketing. It's not going to be extensive, but just some common ones we see from our clients.
Yeah. So back to the storytelling comment earlier, it's really important to understand that not everybody will understand your sustainable benefits if they are just about, carbon or environmental data that they don't really understand. So make sure that you are bringing something tangible to the table, something inspiring that people can relate to, even in the B2B space where you might think your client's a bit more educated. And in the B2C space, it is also super, super important, obviously. The other consideration is around not only focusing on sustainability USPs, and I think it's even more true today, but as much as you are very proud of your people and planet saving solution, you've done your research, that's great, but what you would have found out through research into the buying journey is that you may have several people involved in your buying decision, okay, especially if we're talking about the B2B space, and even in the B2C space. So in the B2B space, for instance, you would have obviously the chief sustainability officer, or maybe there's none actually in the business because it's a small business, but you might have somebody from finance, somebody from ops, from tech, commercial, and top management. So you need to make sure that you can articulate your benefits in several layers, in several facets, so that there is something for everyone. And when you are pitching to someone, you can start with the USPs, the benefits that are going to resonate the most with this person based on their job and what they need to do. Okay. Next one.
Yeah, I think one we see that's tends to get looked at after and when there's a problem is the interrupted journeys. So no journey from user is linear, of course, and people get distracted, and that's part of being people. So it's making sure that you've understood where those interruptions can happen in the flows and fixing those leaks. So then we can you can re-engage the customer, and that's re-engagement usually through marketing tactics to bring them back into the platform. If it's a digital platform, and if it's physical, it still applies in terms of making sure that the interrupt journeys aren't lost users. And also failing to focus on onboarding and referral processes early. What we see a lot of is clients come to us with an onboarding that's failing, it's not working. We have a conversion rate of 10% when it should have 30 to 50% for a digital platform, and that's usually because they've not validated it in the right way in terms of onboarding, and there's clear gaps or problems in that. And then also not focusing on looking after you or using your loyal customers and to refer to new customers and make sure there's rewards in place, some sort of program in place to add a benefit to those customers that are loyal to you. So finally, one bit we want to cover is whether Lean UX is enough. I think Marie touched on it earlier. As a team, we like the process. It's very usable and does deliver good results. However, it's probably not enough in terms of sustainability. So Marie.
Yes. So in traditional Lean UX and UX in general, we focus on human users, okay? And that's good, that's great. But this can involve this kind of growth at any cost or launching products at any cost, which means that, yes, you are removing the pain somewhere for one particular type of users, but it's actually you're putting it away in this magical place called away. which means that it might end up with another person in the value chain or the supply chain or in another place or ecosystem somewhere else in the world, or not so far potentially. This is why we believe that Lean UX needs to sit within a new paradigm. So for instance, if you're a designer or an entrepreneur wearing that design hat, making design decisions, you need to add another dimension to this Venn diagram, and this other dimension is nature. And so when you consciously integrate the needs of users, society, and nature with this kind of system thinking approach, this is where you're entering the realm of regenerative design, and this is what we are practicing at the C Collective. So which means that this notion of product market fit is great, Lean UX is great, but it's just, we believe it's not enough, basically. And so the question that you want to also answer is like an ethical question: is should we build this solution? You know, even if you validated the needs and the feature and so on. So is it ethical to build it? And so we are partners of the Donut Economics Action Lab, which was launched by the author of the book Donut Economics. Maybe some of you have read it. But essentially, Donut Economics is a fantastic toolbox to thoroughly map environmental and social impact. So this very visual donut that you can see here helps you identify risks and opportunities across the 9 planetary boundaries. So not just climate change, but also biodiversity, land conversion, use of chemicals, fertilizers, and so forth. And it also helps you make sure you can fulfill your social needs. So from access to energy, water, food, social equity, housing, decent job, peace and justice, and so forth. So the idea through this mapping exercise that you can undertake for your innovation or even for your existing business is to identify opportunities to potentially reframe the problem that you're trying to solve, or change the solutions design to mitigate this type of negative impacts, to try to have net positive impact, and also potentially to adapt to risk presented by, for instance, climate change, biodiversity loss, resource scarcity, and turn these into opportunities as well for resilience and adaptation. So this is super important. And so in this next example, let's take farming, because we like farming as an industry and for positive innovation. Let's say you are being asked to tackle a challenge of, let's say the country, let's take the UK for example, needs to help farmers plant more trees to fight climate change and maybe biodiversity loss. Okay, that's the challenge. So there are 2 ways to tackle this problem, as maybe to reframe it. So the traditional Lean UX way could be, okay, let's find easier ways for farmers to plant more trees. So that could be a way to frame this. And then the Lean UX plus Regen approach could be, how might we design agricultural landscapes using methods that benefit farmers' health and their financial resilience, but also soil health, biodiversity, yields, agricultural yields, and build climate resilience. So depending on which method you use to frame the problem, you may have different solutions. So the traditional Lean UX might come up with a solution that leads to planting lots of trees of the same species, which is better than nothing, but not ideal in terms of resilience. Whereas the regenerative Lean UX lens might bring something a bit more resilient and more positive overall, which could be around agroforestry, so mixing trees, edible trees and traditional crops, and introducing regenerative agricultural practices. So this was just an example to invite you to also use regenerative principle to reframe the problem and impact the design of what you're creating.
Thanks, Marie. So how does this fit within the lean UX methodology? So what we see is the adaptation we needed is that extra layer on the bottom half of the pyramid, social environmental impact, align with the target customer unmet needs. So that creates then you identifying whether the product and service you're going to offer is desirable or a new feature is desirable, but also then mapping, is it responsible to create that, before moving on to then the value proposition to make sure it's viable and feasible based on UX and the feature set. So it comes in the full of the regenerative design there aspects and not missing out the key social environmental impact. We coined a bit the impact product fit for this instead. So we impact both on the customer, but also the environment as well. And it still remains true that we separate this into design and market the right thing. So now the right thing, not just for the customer, but also the right thing for the planet, and then still then market and design it right once you've established that it is a viable and feasible and responsible thing to do. So an example here being green fintech, and Marie's already touched on it in terms of people signing up for an eco-friendly investment platform. The IPF approach is, are people signing up and are they investing, actually reducing emissions or supporting ethical companies? Important sort of differentiator here in terms of just looking at unmet needs from a user point of view, you should look at unmet systematic gaps, so taking in the user needs, but also a bit of a wider net here. So instead of customer pain points, which is quite a narrow framing, we look at how the possible solution is going to impact the actual nature and environment and social aspects. So make sure there's considering systematic failures, externalities, future state needs, as well as just the people user needs. In terms of the process and how that kind of adapts a little bit is we recommend using part of the mapping that Marie talked about in the donut economics process in terms of synthesizing that into non-human personas. That helps teams kind of understand a little bit the impacts that they're creating, and both from a negative point of view and positive point of view. And then we're not just focused on the users of the platform, but also for ecosystems and population and people. To do this as well, we recommend doing participatory design sessions. So if you're making a product that's going to impact a certain segment of the population, if people that live in green spaces and you're doing something that's going to impact them, that you involve them in the process. So in this example, it could be supply chain workers or conservationists, and they have a say within the creation of the product and service. And then mapping the unintended consequences. So being honest with ourselves, are we actually going to create things that are negative for social or environmental factors? In terms of the actual output of this, there's non-human personas. So non-human personas are anything that's animal or plant life, and you map them much like you would a user persona. And you have non-user personas, which are the people that could be affected within the process of creating the product or service. And that's, again, much like a customer persona, but actually about people that are outside your direct influence. So here's an example of one from nature. We recommend to start broad. It's a bit easier to kind of think broadly at first and then get more depth later on. So here an example of nature, and you map much like you would a customer persona. Map the needs of nature, the challenges that it's facing based on the sector that you're creating a product and service for, and then how you can maybe prevent further damage or potentially heal there. So you just map out a little bit the impact, and you see a bit the donut economics graph in there. And then for the non-user persona, the people affected, the example here is a child worker that could be in the supply chain of a supply that you're using, and again, map out their needs, the challenges they're facing, and how potentially you could help prevent that. And it could be using a different supplier, or it could be trying to actively prevent that from happening. And of course, it's not like you're going to solve all the world's problems, and there's quite big problems there, but the main focus on this is being aware of the potential impact that you could be adding to the system somewhere, and just being honest with ourselves. and it then builds in a potential for actually giving back a little bit to contribution to different aspects.
And maybe just being super responsible and aware of the fact that most of these problems happen at the design stage. So it's the time to get things right.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. And in terms of mapping that on the canvas, there's a change to the canvas there that you blocks 4 and 5 now are looking at the social impact constraints and then how we might mitigate them, and same for the environmental impact constraints and how we might mitigate them. So you map that again within the business canvas to make sure that it's front and center, as well as the user needs in the planning of the product and service. Everything else remains the same. Comes to a close of our whirlwind tour of Lean UX. There's obviously a lot more detail and a lot more frameworks and stuff we can use, which feel free to contact us if you want more information as well. Any questions in the chat, or feel free to put your hands up.
Yeah, feel free to put your hands up or throw the questions in the chat, and or just unmute yourself if you'd like. If you also have some examples, I know there's a lot of practitioners here, like design practitioners, of how you've adapted your practice to the planetary challenges. Happy to hear as well from others, basically. Don't be shy. We have 5 more minutes for this if you'd like. Oh, Oliver?
Yeah, sure.
Thank
Feel
you.
free
Thank you
to-
very much. Oh, there is, wait, sorry for that. So there you go. So I think you're, I'm quite excited about what you told us about all the ethical and sustainable dimensions that come up with business design and the implementation of ideas that come out of a business model is super exciting, and because there's so much from the models that we know so far. I think that's a dimension that has not been considered yet as much as it is needed, like ethical aspects and sustainable aspects and things like that. And I actually had a project of my own that was dealing with a conflict of problem relevance that came out of the user research, and where there was quite a crucial problem. Actually, it was also about farmers, and but the solutions that we ideated, so those were not implemented, but really sort of early stage testing, did not receive as much acceptance as their problem relevance would suggest. So we needed to create a matrix and compare those two properties. And my question, you mentioned about you mentioned behavioral inertia, and that I feel that this is related to this in some kind of way. My question would be like how to address this, and if you're dealing with a problem, you know that's socially relevant and could have quite an impact on the customer segment, but they're super reluctant and refusing on accepting your approach. So what would you do? Would you just iterate your approach on some kind of other way that would be less efficient? Or would you suggest on a certain marketing strategy that would be more cost consuming because you're fighting the inacceptance of a certain approach? Yeah, that's the
Joe, do you want to answer on the UX front, and I have some thoughts on the more marketing and messaging side, maybe.
Yeah. So when my experience of that happened, it has happened to me as well. Is often it can be just a framing issue that you're not able to match the potential solution with the unmet need, and it's difficult sometimes because sometimes it can be an unmet need they don't know they have yet when it talked about impact. But quite often not. Yeah, it tends to be a framing issue, and trying to meet the customer where they are, and then bring them, once they're kind of on board with the frame, bring them into the stepping process. But here it's tricky one to uncover the true unmet need. I think is probably missing in part of the picture. Be my experience of product wise.
And on the sort of marketing messaging side, I'd say really try to understand where this reluctance come from. Is it a psychological barrier? I don't want to change because I've been doing this forever and everybody's this way. I don't want to be standing out for being the only person who does this. So try and validate, look into this. And if there's a social element, maybe try and go through another person that might be more an early adopter. And so that peer pressure might inspire others to move, and follow. So, I don't think there's any better case for, if you think about solar panels, the most likely place where you can have more solar panels on a street is where the solar panels are facing the street side and the other neighbors see this and there's like a FOMO, oh, I want them as well. And same, for your farmers, if the guy next door has implemented this solar panel or whatever, their neighbors are likely to look into this. Reframing the message and maybe downplaying the things that are not going to resonate with your audience. So maybe the sustainability, ethical stuff is not going to be perceived well, but the cost saving aspect, the resilience, the security in crop yields, for instance, that might resonate more. So I think, playing along those lines and just, again, try and error. That's the only way forward.
It goes back to the product market fit kind of ambition of lean UX, of if it's trying to make that fit work, and I think the only way is test and learn as quickly as possible. And it sounds like a little bit maybe the fit is missing in that scenario.
Right. So if we don't have any more questions, I think we're going to wrap up this session. I've put in the chat the link if you want to book a session with Joe to further discuss. Oh, we do have a few more questions now. So happy to take them. Hang on. I know we've run out of time, but you're very welcome to stay. So June, is asking, hang on. I was at a recent Net Zero Business Summit. Turns out the participants are quite varied, not all farmers. They are mainly small SME business. Key takeaway, the government wants business to achieve net zero. There is a timeline. However, government guidelines and framework is not here to help business achieve it in the time that needs to. Question, how might we position our lean UX service to a market audience that are quite detached from UX as a methodology approach to finding solution for their business efforts? All right. Well, I agree that, for some people, speaking to designer is not part of their dream. So I think talking about designing solutions in collaboration with the actual users, de-risking projects through trial and error, showing prototyping. I think all these things can help people change the way they work and test new solutions. That would be my 2 cents.
Yeah, my 2 cents is don't talk about UX. People don't care. Decision makers really don't care.
Fortunately.
So talk about outcomes. Like, what's the outcome you're trying to achieve with lean UX? Don't talk about lean UX to say we're gonna, save money, save time, save costs, doing it this way, and get to a product market fit quicker. I mean, that is those sort of things you want to talk about, than not about design and UX, because even though I love it, I know that a lot of people that CEOs level kind of don't care. They care about the bottom lines.
Yeah. Also, a good thing that makes people move is risk. people are adverse to risk. So if you document the specific climate, environmental, and social risks that are that the clients are likely to be faced, they might be more inclined to make a move in the right direction. So that's another way to go.
That's a good point.
Great.
Outcomes and risk.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for your attention. I've put in the chat a link if you want to stay in touch and reach out to Joe. I think on the next slide there's also our contact details if you want more information. So yeah, let's stay in touch. Feel free to follow us, and hopefully wishing you all the best for the climate tech innovation that you are working on in the future, now or in the future. Bye everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.